Today we're going to continue our talking about plant anatomy, and we're going to start with the leaf. Some of these things we've already talked about, having a dermal layer and other structures like that. So we're going to look at a leaf. Cross-section, by this we mean is if you were to take a leaf and cut it down through from top to bottom. We're going to look at it that way. And when we look at that, we can see that there is a top layer that of cells up here that is the epidermis. It's like the outer skin of a leaf. And there is an upper epidermis, and then the bottom of the leaf has another one we call the lower epidermis. Now we don't distinguish that because we don't have a top and a bottom. Leaves are always, if you find a leaf upside down, there's usually something wrong with the plant. So we have the epidermis. There's an upper and a lower. Now, what was the cuticle? Does somebody remember what the cuticle was? Okay, it's a waxy layer on top of the epidermis. Is it alive or not alive? It's not alive because it was secreted by the epidermis. Now, did we talk about what purpose it has? Yes, to protect. Like some of you, especially in winter, will put some stuff on your lips that are kind of waxy like that. And what's it for? Why did you put it? It's okay to put it on. I put it on too. What's it for? Keep your lips from drying out, right? So that's the same purpose they do here, is to keep the leaf from drying out. Because there's a lot of surface area where it could dry out. So the waxy layer keeps it from drying out. And it's secreted, so it's not alive. It's just a secretion. Now, on the underside, which we'll see in the next slide, are some cells that we call guard cells. They're guarding an opening where gases can get into the leaf and out of the leaf. Because, like, for instance, we want oxygen to come out of the leaf so that we can breathe it, and the leaves need carbon dioxide to go in so that they can use it to carry on photosynthesis. So we have guard cells that are on the bottom side of that. It's kind of hard to tell from this picture. They point to it right there. And the opening, so the guard cells are kind of shaped like bananas, and with the curved parts toward the middle. And the hole that's right here is called the stomata. And it has many of those on the bottom of the leaves. Can you see them? No, they're way too small for you to be able to see them. Under a microscope you could see them. So here's kind of what they look like. They're shaped like bananas, and the way they work is if the plant has plenty moisture, the roots have done their job of bringing water up to the leaves, these stomata will be full of water because it has actually a lot of let's say glucose or something like that in there. And so that means the water concentration is lower, so it will move into there and it will make these banana-shaped structures all full and plump. And when they're in that plump stage, it creates an opening where oxygen can come out or carbon dioxide can go in. Then if the plant is drying out, to prevent it from drying any faster, because that's really important to its survival. It's more important to have enough moisture than it is to have carbon dioxide. So what it will do, because the rest of the leaf is drying out, water will move out of the stomata and they will in effect close up the opening so not any water vapor can even leave the leaf. So it keeps it from drying out as fast. Yes, it'll still dry out, but not as fast because there's no opening for water vapor to exit. Now, also inside of the leaf, you have everything between the top epidermis and the lower epidermis. This area in between is called the parenchyma. Parenchyma. They have quite some interesting names, don't they? Parenchyma. And if you looked at them in Latin, you'd probably realize, well, that makes sense why they called it that. But in that parenchyma, you have all the other things that make up a leaf. You have these cells at the top that are called the palisade mesophyll, and the reason why they're called palisade is because they're like something that's tall, put end to end, I mean side by side by side by side, really close together. So that's why we call it palisade mesophyll. Down in the bottom, we have some spongy mesophyll. If you kind of think about it, if we want carbon dioxide to get to these palisade mesophyll where most of the photosynthesis takes place, I need to have ways for the gases to be able to move around inside the leaf. So they need to be a lot of openings. So notice these kind of jumbled around. They're not really just jumbled, but they kind of look like that. They have lots of openings for the gases to move around. Now, these palisade mesophyll are really tall and skinny, and they have these chloroplasts on the inside. And these chloroplasts are not just stuck in one spot. They actually, there's like a little miniature current going around inside of the palisade mesophyll. And so these chlorophyll will move up here to the top. And this is the direction the sun is shining. So those chlorophyll will get the bright sunlight. Now, if you remember, photosynthesis had a light phase and a dark phase. So they can then, after they've had the light, can move down here and allow other chloroplasts to move to the top to be exposed to light. So they're constantly circulating around inside of these long, skinny, cylinder-type cells. These down here, yes, do they carry on photosynthesis? Yeah. They just don't get as much light because a lot of the light's being blocked by the upper layers, but they still get some light. And then here are those guard cells that we were talking about, and the opening we call the stoma. Now, also inside of here, we see, let's see, we've got that. Inside of here, we have what we call the vascular bundle. That's where we have the things that carry water and nutrients, like from the roots up to the leaves, and this is in the leaf, so this is how it gets there. And then we have some tissue. So these ones with big holes, those are what we call xylem. X-Y-L-E-M. And the X is pronounced like with a Z sound, like a xylophone. And then these down at the bottom are the phloem. They carry food, or like glucose that's produced by photosynthesis, glucose and water. They travel the other direction to nourish other parts of the plant. Most of the time it's kind of headed downward toward the roots. And if it's what's not used up along the way, it gets stored in the roots. Long-term storage like starch and things like that. So we have xylem and phloem are the two types of vascular cell. So remember when we talked about the veins in like a corn, let's say celery. You know, those little, when you have to bite through those little veins, as which you're actually biting through, those have xylem and phloem in there. That's this stuff like right here. And then around the outside of that are cells that we call the sclerenchyma. So we have the parenchyma and the sclerenchyma. You know, there's so many different names. Now, what is the purpose of a root? Well, the obvious one is what? Yeah, I mean, that's one of them. Yeah, to absorb water and nutrients from the soil. If you've ever had to weed the garden, you get to see its other feature, and that is what? It's really hard to pull it out. It's good at anchoring the plant. In fact, we use that a lot to keep soil from eroding. Over in our near our subdivision, they have so many new subdivisions that are being formed, and they're cutting into the hillsides and stuff like that where you have bare dirt. And one of the first things they do is they cover up with this mat of straw and seeds so that it will sprout as quickly as possible so that we'll have roots to hold the soil in place. And once it's established, it does a great job of keeping down erosion. Those of you that maybe crossed the Papio Creek, you know, you look at the bank, what was it, when we had a lot of rain, what was it, first part of December, wasn't that when we had all that rain? And that Papio Creek was running pretty full, but there wasn't any erosion. Why? Because the sides are all covered with grass. Even though the grass is dead, the roots are still down in the soil doing a fantastic job of keeping stuff from eroding away. And that's kind of one of the problems that they had last spring. You know, so many places where the river would go through these dikes that they have built to hold the water back. Well, sometimes the roots aren't established well enough to keep that. So when the water was finally started running over the top, it was just washing the dirt away and slowly eating it away until finally it made a breach in the wall that was supposed to hold the water back. Now, if it had been covered real, like a thick layer like you have along Papio Creek, I don't think it would have washed away right away. It might still have, but not as quickly. So anchorage, absorption are the two things we've talked about. And then obviously inside the root you have to have the things that carry the water and nutrients up to the leaves, the stems and the leaf, and then the things that the leaves have produced, glucose and oxygen, are going to have to make their way down to nourish the roots and to be stored in the roots, or sometimes stored in the stems as well. So food storage is it, roots. We eat a lot of things that are roots because they store food. Carrots, potatoes. Well, potatoes not actually technically a root, but it forms from a root. Now let's talk about kinds of root. Okay, so this plant right here is the classic what? That's the dandelion. How easy are they to pull? Not really, because typically when you try to pull them, how much comes out? Yeah, just the top up here. All this is there where they have food stored, and so if that's all you pulled off the tops, they'll grow that back in just a couple of days. They'll have it all replaced. So it grows back very quickly. If you want to get rid of it, you have to get rid of all of this. Now, so obviously a taproot is really good at what? Remember the list of things we said roots did? It's really good at what? Anchoring, right? Boy, it's hard to pull a dandelion out. I typically, when I grab a hold of it, I put tension on it, but not really, and I just keep moving it around like this, slowly trying to break off the roots that are on the side until finally the whole thing comes out of the ground. But sometimes I fail at it too. But the advantage of a taproot system like this is it can pick up moisture down lower. So in other words, even if you ever notice that, what happens when your grass turns brown in summer? What are the things that are still green? All the dandelions are still green. They have their roots down there where there still is water or moisture, and they'll stay green a lot longer. Now, another kind of root system is what we call the fibrous root system. This is like what your grass has. But Grass typically only has its roots in the first couple inches of the soil, but it has an advantage of being able to absorb a lot of rain, or a lot of moisture or water quickly after a rain. So if you think about it, maybe at the end of August, when it started raining again, we had all that rain in spring, and then we had this dry spell. And then in August, it rained again. What was one of the first things to green up? Grass. Because they quickly absorbed the water and they greened right up again. So grass can go dormant, and all it takes is a rain, and they have a fantastic root system for absorbing a lot of water in a short amount of time. Taproots, not so. Now, there are some plants that have root systems that can go way down. I've heard that alfalfa, we don't have too many alfalfa fields around anymore. There was one when I would drive to the La Platte campus. It was on 36th Street between Snakecloth and Platteview Road. In between there was an alfalfa field on the west side. They have now, I think they're just planting into corn and soybeans and stuff like that. But it was one of those, even in the middle of summer, it's green. Why? Because the roots sometimes will go down as far as 15 to 20 feet. So in other words, they're down there where no other plants can get that water. And so they often, you can have, in the middle of summer, still have a nice crop of alfalfa that they'll cut and bale for cattle to eat. So they don't have a dominant taproot. They just have lots of little roots, and they can soak it up. So if you think about which of those two roots would probably be best in the long term for a desert plant where you hardly ever get rain. You think it would be the taproot, but because it rains so seldom, it's even dry down there. You need something that will, when it does rain, will soak it up really quickly. And they all have fibrous taproot systems. And it's amazing how, when we lived in Phoenix, we would say the desert is blooming because it was picking up the moisture in a short amount of time.